Okay, this is Dr. Brandy Marks, Biblical Licensed Mental Health Counselor in Vancouver, Washington. Today we're looking again at Biblical Life Skills, the Wilderness Journey, Part 2, Into the Wilderness. You know, dependencies, our sinful behaviors, if you will, where we depend on things other than God, can be almost anything. So many times we think of alcohol, drugs, and sex, pornography, but it can really be almost anything. Relationships, emotions such as anger, tearfulness over every little thing, drugs, alcohol, sex, food, friends, soap, money, time on the phone, television, children's shopping, Game Boys, cell phones anymore. Okay, alcohol, drugs, and these things of the world, though, are not our only problem. We also have emotional dependencies that show up in our neediness. The need to be right, the need to be in control, the need to look good, and the need to feel good, often about ourselves, at the expense of family, friends, co-workers, and so on and so forth. Joseph showed off his daddy's coat of many colors, bragging about his God-given dreams. Well, we know how that turned out, in jealousy and envy. You know, his brothers sell him as a slave, off he goes to Egypt, and of course, in the long run, everything worked out. But in the meantime, Joseph went through a lot of misery because of, well, he was a teenager then, you know, he was kind of happy, and maybe he was insecure with daddy making him a favorite, even though he liked it. Who knows? He developed, his bragging about the coat of many colors, showing off about his God-given dreams, making other people feel bad. Okay, so anyway, needs we seek to fulfill when we behave certain ways. Most of the ones I'm going to show you are from the Bible, and they're based on the give to receive principle. For example, attention. Give attention to one another. You know, by giving to other people, you receive in return. Acceptance, support, approval, comfort, love, affection, appreciation, encouragement, security, belonging, respect. Okay, these are all needs we seek to fulfill, often in aberrant ways. But the best way to get them filled is by doing unto others, giving as we want to receive. It's a fabulous way to achieve our needs. How do we make a mess of things when we do mess up in love? In Romans, Paul describes the process of how we get into ungodly, sinful behavior. In chapter 1 of Romans, we reject God by worshiping our idols: power, wealth, drugs, alcohol, immoral sex, pornography, boredom, laziness, television, and on and on and on we could go. Addictions, lusts of the flesh, if you will, are rebellion against God that ruin our peace of mind, and all too often our relationships. We get in a whole lot of trouble. You know, we believe our own power and might will get us through. We can figure it out. We'll make it work, whatever it may be. Well, God created us to live in relationship with Him and other people, but not dependent relationships or independent isolation. You know, even being too dependent upon God, where we never step out in faith and do what we need, can be a sinful behavior. When we fail, which we often do, we turn to God, repent, ask His forgiveness, and help in moving forward. But if we don't, until then, you know, we have a wrong understanding of our relationship with God and other people if we can't do the former. Because we depend upon ourselves or other people to meet our needs instead of God, you know, maybe we ignore Him in favor of our favorite television show, the people we hang out with, some kind of other addiction, or other behavior that we become involved in to avoid a close, intimate relationship with the Lord. You know, we rationalize our behavior, blame others, or make excuses. In other words, we live in denial. Pride and arrogance help to sustain our faulty beliefs. Then we become enslaved by them. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. We know in our heart we need God and change, but ignore it. You know, we become more deeply immersed in our sin and in use blaming, denial, and we minimize the problem. Our relationships begin to fail, and we often choose friends who encourage our faulty beliefs. If another person challenges our thinking, we may abandon our friends and family and leave, get a divorce, and join with like-minded people, people who think the same as we do. You know, addicts go to the drug houses, alcoholics hang out in bars with alcoholics, and Christians often join a church or other group. Now, there's nothing wrong with the church group, but when it takes precedence over your own family, then you've got a problem. Okay. Hardened in our rebellion, the worse it gets, the more we convince ourselves we're right. Some people would rather die in their pride than admit they were in the wrong. My father lost 2 marriages and his children for the most part because he couldn't put the bottle down, or when he did go into recovery, he couldn't sustain it. I've seen other people who would rather, literally, they died in their addiction and their horrible behavior because they refused to give it up and turn to God. Many die from addiction, sexual disease, suicide, from loneliness and despair. The death of a relationship can come in many ways: divorce, suicide, sometimes murder. Okay, they're all permanent. So we bring others into our lifestyle believing if others are doing it, it must be okay. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. We make it okay to sustain our faulty beliefs. You know, the obese, alcoholics, addicts, and others want to believe it's genetics, so it's not their fault. Genetic disorder for obesity is extremely rare. Okay, genetics may play a role in certain things, but generally we learn these behaviors to a certain extent. Others are chosen. Even genetics, when it is part of the problem, requires a choice when it comes to alcohol, drugs, food, and anger. You know, someone can say, well, we have a genetic predisposition towards alcoholism. And I always say, yes, but you choose to pick up the bottle. The addict, you choose to buy the drugs and put the needle in your arm. And the overeater, you know, I make bad choices in eating all the time. If I make cheesecake, I have a lot of trouble stopping after one piece, okay? It's a choice I make. Same thing with outrageous anger. You know, anger is shown, you get an endorphin rush off of it. So we tend to anger, and exacerbate it as time goes on because our need for that endorphin grows. And so our anger becomes worse and worse. The best way to stop is to just stop. Okay. But of course, going into, well, anyway, we'll move on. That's part of what we're doing here. Okay, admit to your problem behaviors. That's very difficult for the prideful to do. Well, how do you avoid your home life, the people around you? A lot of church and other activities. Okay, maybe you avoid your spouse by spending time with your children instead of your spouse, or at work instead of with your spouse. You avoid intimacy by the television, computer, stereo, talking on the phone all the time, whatever. Going to all these self-help groups and doing stuff like that, but spending little time with sitting down and just talking to your family. What do you avoid and how do you do it? Be honest with yourself. That is so critical. Okay, what do you use to control to get what you want? Maybe use anger to control your spouse. You use tears to control your friends or your spouse. You use bribes to control your children, get them to do what you want. You use fear to control your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. You maybe use tears to get your husband to stop badgering about doing the housework. Oh, I'm just overwhelmed. I just can't handle it. I'm so-and-so and such and such. I want you to understand. Instead of, well, anyway, we'll get on to the ways to deal with it later. Okay. How do you rain on other people's parade, on their joy? You know, stick them where it really hurts or suggest a better way they could do whatever. So you look good, feel powerful, get even with them. Okay. How do you rain on other people's joy? Make their life miserable when they're feeling good. Other problem behaviors might include annoying people by digging up old bones of the past. You know, you're always bringing up the past. When someone says something, well, we need to, well, you know, I can remember when you, blah, blah, blah. And it's their way to distract so they don't have to deal with the current problem. Okay. How about fear? How do you use fear? I'm leaving if you don't. You're so out of here if you do. Oh, right, like you're so great, you're so smart, venomous sarcasm. How about you get revenge by getting loaded, arrested, quitting your job, you never arrive on time, you're depressed, you run away in other ways, eat the last of the pie or cake, and so on and so forth. Okay, how do you get revenge on people when things aren't going your way? Okay, I depend on myself by, well, never ask for help because they wouldn't want to help me. I'd rather be safe than take a risk and be told no. Emotional needs we depend on people or things of the world to fill include, as we've seen in the beginning, all of these: attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and so forth are needs we seek to fulfill. Who do you depend on to fill your need for whatever? What do you depend upon your mate for? Love and affection, appreciation and attention. Because you don't trust God or other people? Sometimes your spouse may be overwhelmed with your neediness, and it would be good if you had other ways to get your needs filled instead of depending upon that one person. Okay, to me, God and religion are, you're all and everything, you're a Superman, not real to you. Maybe God is too frightening, or he's too safe and secure, so you depend upon him and never step out in faith, or something else. How do you rationalize your behavior? Minimize, denial, blame someone else. My parents did it, so it's okay by me. My friends do it, so it must be okay. I'm not hurting anyone. It's so-and-so's fault, and so on and so forth. My friends, are they true or false friends? Do they encourage your dysfunctional behavior, your faulty behavior? True friends wouldn't lie to you about your behavior. A true friend is someone who's honest with you, even if it hurts your feelings. False friends try to make you feel good about your dishonesty or whatever it is. Maybe because they're involved in the same thing and they don't want to have to confront their own issues. How do you rebel against conformity, doing it God's way? Living my way even when I know it's wrong, because I have a right to live my way? Yes, we do have a right to live our way. We were given free will, the freedom to choose at will, whatever. Hopefully, God willing, you're choosing to live God's way. To get attention so someone will notice you or give you love, maybe? I used to use that one a lot. Okay. How do you draw others into your lifestyle? Living your way and setting a poor example. Encouraging others to live the same way. Convincing them it's okay. Justifying what you do. Convincing others it's all right. It's all denial. Okay, dependencies. What do you want to overcome? Who do you blame for your problems? How do you deny it? What do you argue about and want to have your way? What price have you paid for having things your way? Relationships you've lost or other things. Okay, name 3 of your dependencies. Have a notepad around and write some of this stuff down. Okay, abandonment. Who abandoned you? When? How were you abandoned? What was the effect on your life? Do you now abandon relationships? This is what can lead you into use the same method to abandon relationships or something different. You don't marry and divorce. You don't get married, or if you do, you get divorced, or you stay safely out of committed relationships. Okay, here's those attentional needs, acceptance, and so on and so forth again that we're looking at. This is an example of a life map, which I encourage you to make. So you look at back over the patterns that have occurred in your life. Now, this is my life journey during the 50 years of my life. It's changed somewhat, but mostly I've been involved in ministry for the last 26, 27 years. Okay, your life map lessons. Looking over your life map, consider the following. Answer them to the best of your ability. What have you learned about yourself? What are the challenges you face? The support you've gained throughout life, the opportunities you have, and the support you need. Now, in the first part of this one, we did a tree of life, which can be hugely helpful also in answering these questions. Okay, how did you get to where you are now in your life map? Whose example have you followed? Why do you stay? What's your reward? What makes you feel good about staying in your anger? Or so forth. Okay, what will you give up to have harmony? If you give up your independence or codependence, what is that going to mean for you? What fears will surface? How will your life be different, though, if you make that change? You'll feel more comfortable, confident, some other feel good. Okay, here's an exercise in the New Beginnings. Take a risk and talk about your fears. Being honest with someone that you trust about them. Learn to trust. Emotional touch helps build trust. It has to be safe touch, however. Okay, sit across from another person. If you're in a group, for example, or maybe just with a friend, look at them and notice everything about them. Don't judge what you see. Be like an infant and just find joy and amazement in noticing everything about this other person and they about you, which can be extremely uncomfortable. But do it anyway. Have fun and enjoy it. Discuss your experience with this exercise. What were you feeling? How difficult was it to not judge and to just do it, and even though you were uncomfortable with it? Okay. Next, we're going to look at Part 3, The Way Out of the Wilderness. Okay, God bless. Thank you for tuning in. This is Dr. Brandy Marks, biblical licensed mental health counselor, Vancouver, Washington.